Okay, we're being recorded. So what we're going to do today, I'm kind of spending the whole year or a good part of the year trying to make sure that everybody's aware of all the finding aids that the church has put together to help us with. And so we already visited with the wiki, the research wiki, and today we're going to talk briefly about hints, but more for the beyond part. Talk a little bit about guided research, because I know a lot of you probably have no clue what guided research is and want to introduce you to it because it can be a very big help in your researching and helping others. So with that, we will get started. So, first thing to do is think about how complete is your tree? And that's always a question we need to think about, and we can go from several different directions when we're talking about the tree at FamilySearch. Do you have brick walls in it? Are there families that are missing? Are there children missing in families? Are the people all fully developed? In other words, do they have their full names, their full birth and death information, places, all that information that really helps identify the person? Are they fully sourced? And we know for a fact that the majority of the people in tree are absolutely not fully sourced. And so there's still a lot that needs to be done on trees. And we should never really accept what is shown on tree to either be fully complete or accurate until we verify it. Because even though it may have a lot of sources, those sources may not be for the person that is intended for. So FamilySearch provides many different levels of support, trying to help us to create this completed record. And we're going to talk about some of those sources tonight, sources of help. I kind of made a little chart up with your ancestor up at the top, and your ancestor's information is built upon two kinds of records: unindexed records that people have to plow through and browse and go page by page and find the information, and indexed records. And what we want to do tonight is just take a small portion of those indexed records and talk about the ones that have been turned into hints and the ones that can be found in guided research. And so that's what our focus is going to be today. In subsequent months, we will talk about the records found in historical records, both indexed and unindexed. And then we'll also talk about records that are found elsewhere on FamilySearch that aren't really in the record search section of the historical record section of FamilySearch. And then also some other kinds of records like books and things like that. But tonight it's hints and guided research. Okay, so FamilySearch really has a dilemma. And this came very apparent when in 2012 they introduced New FamilySearch. And FamilySearch has learned they have to walk kind of a tightrope, because when they have people, first place, they have people from advanced professionals to rank beginners using their site. And they found that everybody doesn't use the site with the same degree of precision. And so they came into some real problems. And what they've learned is this: from experience, and a sad experience, they discovered that especially the ranked beginners were more than happy to accept any suggestion that FamilySearch gave them as the gospel and do it. If FamilySearch said merge these two people, even though one was John Jones and the other one was William Smith, people would do it because, hey, FamilySearch said it's a duplicate. And so they had some real problems because of that. A lot of records became really mangled, and it was partly FamilySearch's fault for trying to be very generous in helping everybody. Okay, well, over time, FamilySearch has learned to tighten up their standards for things like hints, possible duplicates, and things like that. so that the ones that you now see are really only those that have a very high probability of being correct or accurate. Doesn't guarantee they are correct or accurate, but they should be most of the time something you can rely on, but you still need to be careful. The problem then becomes if people see no hints or they see no duplicates, they assume there are no more records for this person, and there's obviously no duplicate people in the system for this person. And we know from experience that those are both false fallacies, in that we know that even though there's no hints, there's going to be other records out there. And we also know, even though FamilySearch isn't showing us any duplicates, there's very often duplicates out there, more often than not. So for beginners, in some respects, what they've set up is a good system for them because it keeps them from making mistakes, because the restrictions on what's provided to the user is so restricted that those only high quality things are actually shown. FamilySearch has lately been trying to loosen that up a little bit, but they're still very aware of what happens if they get too generous with us. Okay, so another way to kind of look at the situation is this. Think of this as being an iceberg, and at the tip of the iceberg are the hints. Hints really only make up a very small amount of the records that FamilySearch has, probably less than what this diagram would indicate. They're all part of the group of indexed records. And index records themselves are only a small portion of the total population of records out there, because there are many unindexed but digitized records. First, those found in historical records, and then even more that aren't even in historical records, but they're digitized. And they're out there if you know how to find them. And then, of course, all of those records are just a portion of the total collection of FamilySearch, and the millions of records that they don't like to talk about that aren't digitized yet. And there still are millions of records that aren't digitized, probably billions of records that still aren't digitized, and many more that come in virtually every day. Okay, so if you just use hints, you really limit what you can do in tree. That's the big point of this slide, is to realize that you really need to go beyond hints if you want to have a complete picture for a person. Okay, another way of looking at it is to think of those apples on the tree there as being records for a person. And the ones that are circled in blue are the hints that were offered for that person. And you can take those hints and you can attach them.
They're damn small, you can't see it.
You can't see the presentation?
Oh, okay, no, I can now. Thanks.
Okay. Had me worried there for a second. So anyway, the ones that are circled are the hints. Once you process those, what about all the others? That's where the problem becomes. And it's hard because as a consultant, you may not feel like you're an expert in research. And so you're reluctant to go into this. And the patron you're helping could be a rank beginner, and they have no clue that there's all these other records. And so what we want to do is show you how FamilySearch is helping drive you towards all of those other records. And so this is what we'll be addressing tonight. So let's talk about the hints. They're hints from the historical records that are on FamilySearch under historical records. And Family Tree searches for these for you automatically and provides them to your relatives, your ancestors, your cousins, as they find them. And the hinting system comes into play as soon as you get a person added into tree. They don't show up immediately, but they will show up shortly thereafter. And then over time, you may use up all the hints on somebody and come back a week or two later and they'll have hints again, because the system will continue to look for hints and they may find some later. So I pulled up the hints from one of my great uncles, John Givens, and you can see 3 of his hints sitting there. Okay. But you need to take care when you do this, because you want to make sure that they really go to the person. Even though they're high quality, you still need to turn your brain on and make sure that they really do fit the person that they're indicated for. Okay, so I took the very first one and opened it up, and it's an obituary from the newspaper. And it says that this person, the newspaper was published at the end of June 1940 in Little Rock, Arkansas. That meets my great uncle's bio, because he died at the end of June in 1840 in Little Rock. So this is most likely and undoubtedly him. And so we'll go ahead and we'll do an attachment of this source, this hint, to John's record. And I want to run through one of these just so you get a reminder of how we do the source tracker process. Now I'm going backwards, excuse me. Okay, so we're going to review and attach. So when it comes up, in this particular case, there's really no new life facts, no new birth or death information. What I had on John over in here was already complete. What they provide was no more than what I already had, or actually less. What it does do, though, and I will want to add to his record, the fact that there's an obituary on the 30th of June, 1940 in Little Rock, and that he lived at 114 Jefferson Street. I assume that's in Little Rock, though the obituary doesn't say that specifically. I also want to make sure I don't miss the fact that John's 2 children, Frank and Helen, are mentioned in this obituary, and they can be sourced. This last person down there happens to be their stepsister, and she's not really a blood relative. She's just the daughter of the second wife. And so I don't have her in my system. So I could source her if I wanted to, but for my purposes, I'm going to leave her out. I will, when I go to do this, want to fill in the reason box with something like, this is an obituary out of the Little Rock newspaper that verifies all the things that I knew about John, his death and his wife and children. And then I'll click attach, and it will become part of his record. Now, this brings up a real interesting situation, because in the hints for John, there's 2 that look very similar, and they probably should look similar, because there are actually hints for the same exact obituary. And so that's very strange. Yeah, I think what it is a probably a boo-boo of some kind, that when they were transcribing these, they transcribed his obituary 2 times. So what are we to do? There's really 3 things we could do. One is just ignore the thing, and that doesn't make any sense. So really, my 2 options are, do I want to source the second one, which would mean I then have a duplicate source, or do I want to dismiss the hint? Now, the trouble with dismissing a hint, it'll keep your source list nice and clean, but that hint doesn't disappear. That hint's still a source out there that's not been sourced, a record out there that's not been sourced. Somebody else could come along and take it and create another John Givens, and we could end up with a duplicate person. And so, that's not really a good solution. But those are really our two options. So why are there duplicates? In this case, I said it's because they made a mistake. But it could be sometimes there are duplicate filmings of records, or there could actually be two of the same record. There could be an actual duplicate record that exists. Or the records could be listed in multiple databases. You'll see that with marriages. The county has the original. They sent it to the state. And some magazine came along and published these records in their magazine. And all three of those have gone into our system. And now there's 3 marriage records for the one marriage. So there's often duplicates of that nature. So what should we do with this duplicate record? The real logical thing is to source it. We want to get every source or every record out of the system that we can so that duplicates aren't created. Even if it makes the list of sources a little messy for a person, better that the list of sources be messy than duplicate people get created. Now, FamilySearch has talked about building a tool that will merge identical duplicate records. And someday in the future, these 2 records will be merged into one. They're still working on it. They found that to be a lot harder to do than it was to suggest. And so they're still working on it along with a lot of other things. But someday they will clean it up. So the smart thing to do is have them all sourced so that they can be cleaned up. Okay, so now I've done the hints. Hints are easy to do. All I do is just click on them and just go through them. Sooner or later, I'm going to run out of hints, and maybe I'm still not happy with the person I have. What do I do now?
Can I ask a question before you
Yeah,
go on? One of the things that I do when I put in the statement after I've attached a source is I actually put the information so that the person who's looking at it will be able to compare and they'll know why I added the source. For example, instead of just saying it matches my record, I say this documents John Jones with his wife so and so and his children so and so and so and so and so and so. And to me, when I go back and look at that, I can look at it and say, oh, yeah, that's exactly who it is. And it's a quick check. Where the other way, I have to go back through the statement and say, okay, he says this matches his record. Now I've got to compare his record again, and I'm doing it again.
yeah. The other place, but it means a little more work, is inside the source itself. There's the notes section. And in that notes section, you could put all that stuff. But it won't show up until you open up the source to look at it. And so what you've done is going the extra mile.
One thing I've noticed is when I actually look at the page after I've done that, the statement that I make is put right into there and it explains it right on the person's page. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually separate from the source itself. It's the reason for the source. And that's why it shows up so clear. Yeah. And that's a good thing to do. Well, not many people will do that, but that's a smart thing to do. That's a good suggestion. I appreciate that. Okay, so now what are we going to do if we run out of hints? Well, FamilySearch has tried to address that issue because they know there's a lot of people out there that are very weak at research. Some of us, and definitely many of our patrons. And so about 5 years ago, they started developing a tool called guided research. You could call it research for dummies, but I don't want to do that because that's name calling. But it really is kind of that. It's a simplified research technique that can be used. It's like a partial bridge to introducing people to researching, going from strictly processing hints, which are spoon-fed to you on the person's homepage, to a kind of research, but taking all the questioning and technical stuff out of it. And so what their goal was to develop a tool that would work at least 60% of the time. Their goal was to have at least 60% of searches in guided research come up with a result, or better if they could. And they were going to limit it, though, to just 3 kinds of records: birth, marriage, or death, because, hey, those are the 3 main topics about a person that we need. We need to know about their birth, their marriage, and their death. And so to do their temple work, we need at least one of those. And so this is what they focused on, and they decided that that would be the only kind of records that guided research would address. And so guided research's greatest value is that it helps you as a patron by prioritizing all the various sources that are out there and guide you to the best, most comprehensive databases first. So you don't have to do any thinking other than just clicking to get to where these sources are all prepared for you to have a simple search to find what you're looking for. Okay, and they also want to go beyond just pointing you to the best databases, but also provide you with some other things if you're having trouble after trying those good databases. They want to give you some secondary type of sources and searches and ideas that will help you if your search is a failure, if you can't find what you're looking for. So their goal is to help you find what you're looking for. If not, then let's show you some other things you can do. And it's all put together into a simple, easy package. Okay, and the key thing is keep it simple and provide success. Okay, so now, does it work for the entire world? The short answer is no, because it's designed to work with localities that have adequate online transcribed records that make searching fruitful. So obviously they want you to go to a locality. They want you to use it for a locality where you have a chance for success, because there are things online that are already transcribed. So they started with, and they are enlarging it with these localities. United States, and they break that down by state so that you can search specific states in the United States. Canada is divided up into its provinces and territories. The counties of England, Costa Rica as a country, Denmark as a country, Finland, Ireland, the Isle of Man, Italy, Jersey, the Isles of Jersey, Mexico, Netherlands, Norway, Scotland, Sweden, and Wales. So if you look at that, it really covers a lot of the countries that our ancestors came from, a goodly portion. The part that's important about this is those are all countries that have extensive online transcribed records. Now, they're not just sitting still, they're working towards adding. Right now, they're currently working on getting the Czech Republic prepared to add to this. Norway, they're going to add browsable records. They're going to start moving into doing some browsable record sets for countries also. And then they're also going to add Puerto Rico, Fiji, and America Samoa. You might wonder why those 3. That's because FamilySearch picks like 5 countries each year that they're going to focus on. And in 2020, Puerto Rico, Fiji, and America Samoa were 3 of the countries that they were really focusing on. And as time goes on, they will add even more. Beyond that, they hope someday to work it out so that countries that only have browsable images can be included here, and your search will lead you to the best record collection to browse, but you'll still have to be doing some browsing. And so they're expanding this as it goes. But basically, if you think about the locations that they're using right now, that covers a good portion of the world for most of our relatives or most of our patrons. We should be able to do some researching using this tool for just about everybody. Okay, so let's use an example. We'll spend the rest of the time talking about Charles Colladay. Charles T Colladay. I added him into Tree about 5 years ago. I was doing a project and I was doing some census researching. And so just using censuses, 1850, 60, 70, and 80, I had put this family together. And all I had basically on Charles was that he was born in 1843 in Pennsylvania. And that's all I really know about him. It's been interesting. For 5 years, this family sat there. No new sources have been added. No new information has been added. Somebody picked up his temple work for baptisms and confirmation back in 2018, but that's about it. So the question begs to be answered. What can we do for Charles? Well, Charles, when you go to his record, right off the bat says there's a possible duplicate. And so on the screen here is this possible duplicate. The vital information is almost identical. 1843 Pennsylvania is all they know about him, but it shows a wife, Harriet or Hallie Gundaker, and a child, Henry Gundaker Colladay. I found that interesting because on the 1880 census, I had noted that Charles was listed living at home with his parents, and right below him was a, quote, grandson, Henry G. Colladay, age 0. It didn't say that he was Charles' son, but because he was listed right below Charles, you would think he was. But there was no wife. And so this kind of starts to put the picture together for this family. So I did dig around a little bit just out of curiosity, and I found an 1887 obituary for Harriet Gundaker's father. And it mentioned, and I love this obituary, these guys must have known in 1887 I needed this information, because this obituary said that he had a daughter, Hattie, who married Charles Colladay, and that she had been dead for a number of years. I've never seen an obituary that listed things like that. And that's just so beautiful because it kind of puts the picture together, and you almost have to think that she probably died in childbirth or died shortly after the birth of her child, Henry, because she's not in the family in 1880 and Henry was born in 1879. Okay, so there's a bunch of hints. In fact, there's 5 hints. You only see 3 here, but there's a total actually of 5. And so the first thing I did is I processed all those hints, and we don't need to see that. By the time I was finished processing the hints, I now know that Charles' middle name is Temple. I have a complete date of birth and place, and I have his complete death date, but no place. So that left me with a couple of questions. The first one is, did he marry again? I mean, he married once. He's got a little kid. Tendency is when you have a little kid, you get married again, so somebody can help you raise him. And then the other question is, where did he die? We've got a death date, but we don't have a place. And I'm one of those that kind of likes to fill in the blanks. So we need to look for those. So we're going to use guided research. So to use guided research, you go to the wiki. This is the home page for the wiki. You can find it by going to FamilySearch.org, and then on the search tab on the ribbon across the top on the search dropdown, the last thing is wiki. And when you click on it, this is the page that shows up. And so what we're going to do is over on the right-hand side, it'll say guided research, jumpstart your research, use guided research. We're going to click on that. And up pops a list of localities. Those look familiar because those are the ones that I had on the screen before. And since we want to do some US work, we're going to click on United States. And when we do that, we get this screen and we have two ways to pick the state. We can either click on the name of the state, Pennsylvania in this case, or we can go over in the map and actually click on PA there, and that would open it up too. So we have two ways to do it. Clickable map, list of places. So we're going to click on Pennsylvania. This will be the page that shows up. And there's not much there. It just says, select a type of information you're looking for, birth, marriage, or death. Well, we were looking for marriages first. Did Charles marry again? We don't even have a marriage date for the first marriage as far as that goes. So we're going to be wanting to look at marriages. So when we click on marriage, what we get is just this. We got marriages, and it says search a marriage index. It says start here, and you have Pennsylvania marriage collections at FamilySearch. And if you click on here on list of collections, it'll show you all the different collections of records that they have lumped together for you so that when you do your search, you're really searching for all those. Now, according to FamilySearch, this is the best place to go. You'll have a better chance of finding your answer here statistically. If that doesn't work, if start here doesn't work, you'll then come down here if there's a second group like there is here and try this next, which in this case is a collection at Find My Pass. Find My Pass has the single largest United States marriage index list online in a single list. You can search the entire country in that collection at Find My Pass. But we're going to start with Start Here. So we're going to click on that. We will have to fill in the data that we want to search. So I just said, let's search for Charles T Colladay and see what comes up. Well, lo and behold, I hit the gold mine. I found in the very first three choices, the third one was Hallie Gundaker's marriage to him on the 1st of November in 1878 in Adams County, Pennsylvania. And then the first two on this page are another marriage. A marriage 11 years later over in Philadelphia to a Mary Schroeder. So he did get married again. So I did some research and looked it up, and sure enough, this really is him getting married again. I'd only searched him up through 1880, so I didn't know what happened after that. So using guided research, I've answered both marriages with just one simple little search. So now, this is what we have on Charles. We've got Charles with Harriet or Hallie Gundaker and his marriage there in 1878 and their child Henry, born the next year, and now a marriage in 1889 to Mary Schroeder. And so using guided research, I've added that. Now, will guided research get me a death place? Well, let's see. I click on Pennsylvania again, but this time on death, and they provide me with one place to go. It's over to Ancestry. Actually, I have two here. They also have try this next down here. But right here, this search now or start here is at Ancestry. So we'll go to Ancestry. And here's the transcription for his obituary, here, his death certificate. And you'll see that he died in Lower Merion Township, Montgomery County. And so I now have verification for his birth, his death place, and his parents. And he's got his whole full name there. So I know this is my guy. So because this is at Ancestry, I'm either going to have to use record search or I'm going to have to manually create a source for this record because it's not at FamilySearch. And I put dozens and dozens and dozens of Pennsylvania death certificates into FamilySearch's records because FamilySearch does not have the death certificates, at least not at this time. Okay, so I've answered my 2 questions using guided research. So now this is what Charles looks like. I've got his full name. I've got his full birth date and place. I have his death date in place. And I even know where he's buried. He's buried in Philadelphia. So I've been able to really add a lot to Charles. So now let's look at Hallie, because at this point, his first wife, all we know is her name.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah.
There was a difference in spelling because you had Colladay and that death record, even for his father, had Calladay. How do you determine which is correct?
All the rest of the records are Colladay. That was just a transcription error.
Okay.
You know, these things are all handwritten, and you're going to find all kinds of funny things. But everything else on the family is Colladay.
And Bob, you also picked up his parents on those records as well. So you'd have another.
I already had the parents.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, I had his parents. I don't have hers.
Soon too. Okay.
Okay, so for Hallie or Harriet, all I've got is her name and that she's dead. That's all we knew at this point. Notice that her ordinances are green. You might at first glance wonder, because in the old days, it used to be we had to have a birth or death date in place to do temple work. Now it's birth, death, or marriage date or place. And with the marriage date in place, her work can be done even though there's no vital information on her. And so that's just the way the system works now. I would not want to do her work with a name, with a setup like this right now. I would definitely want to see more. Okay. And so what we need to do is see if we can find out some of that. So I went to guided research and I searched for birth for her. And up came something that was kind of strange. It's a DAR lineage record. And if you want strange things, this is a great one. So it's for Hallie Gundaker. It says that she was in York. She was born in 1849 in York, Pennsylvania. And it had a picture for the image. It had an image thing. So I clicked on the image. And what comes up is this lineage form for the DAR for Charles Colladay. And now here's Charles's information. And it says his first wife is Hallie Gundaker, born in 1849 at blank, died at blank, but it gives a death date, the 8th of January, 1880, and the marriage of the 1st of November, 1878. Well, the marriage date we already knew, and we had a suspicion that she died before the 1880 census, and she died on the 8th of January in 1880 before the census was taken, and it gives us a date. Notice the death information's not in the transcription. This is why you go look at originals. You don't just go by transcriptions, you look at the originals. What bothers me is the fact that it doesn't really say York here, and yet they're saying it says York. Maybe there was something on some other page, and I failed to look at enough pages to catch it. But from what I could see, all I get is the year and not the place. But York makes sense because that's where the family was. And this came out of somebody's book, The Genealogy of the Worrells by Frank B. something here. So anyway, I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to get out of guided research, but it gave me what I needed. So updating Hallie, I now have a year at least of birth. I have a death date. And I said, based on the DAR papers, and it actually, you know, it's secondary. It's not original. So, you know, it's kind of iffy, but we'll have to go with it. That's what we've got. Yes.
Bob, this is Louise. When you index, a lot of times the index instructions say person's name, it just gives you things that you can put in, but
Yeah.
it doesn't allow you to put all the information that is on the obituary or something. So that might have been one of those where you.
Oh, I'm sure that's what it is. It was probably basically being used as a birth record.
Right.
And so they weren't thinking about death dates and things like that.
Okay.
Okay, so now, once we got that much on her, and before there were no duplicates, now suddenly there's duplicates. But see, that's typical. I have to get enough information about Hallie so that she can match up with somebody that has some information. And FamilySearch is trying to be careful for me, so that's fine. But it is kind of funny that at this point, after you've added birth and death information to people, you will often see a duplicate. And so up comes a duplicate for Harriet Letitia Gundaker. And so it looks promising, so we'll look at it. So here's this duplicate record. It says that she was actually born in Lancaster, and they have an about date. So even they have some kind of a calculation going on here. I would suspect it's probably a tombstone where it says she's so many years, months, and days old, because they do have the death burial information here. The death date matches what I already had, and it says her alternate name. Well, they have Harriet. They should have Hattie, because that's the, or Hallie, that's the other name she went by over here. What's interesting though, this record that's now the duplicate that we're going to merge in has her parents. This will connect her with her parents. I have her marriage, which the other people didn't have. So by doing this merge, we make her a complete person with both parents and spouse. That's often what happens in these situations when you're building a person from scratch and you don't know how they fit into a family. And very often the family didn't know what happened to her. So we go ahead and we merge these. And so now what have we got? We started out with just Charles and a birth year. We've now got Charles with a full name, full information, marriage date, Harriet's full name, full information, a child. We have, and this still needs to be edited because I have an actual marriage date from one of those two sources, but I didn't edit it in there. And I still need to work on Mary Schroeder. I never have updated her. But basically just using the hints that were available and using guided research, we've been able to build this family this way. It really is an easy system. Okay, now what if you don't find anything? Now, remember I said they want to provide you with other stuff. So here's a Pennsylvania death screen. They give you your two options. Start here with the death certificates. Try this next, the death indexes at the state archives. If that doesn't work, what can you do? Well, down below that, they provide you with 4 things. They provide you with additional online resources, substitute records, improved searching techniques, and why the records might not exist. And they do this for every locality and every kind of record. So additional online resources. If you couldn't find it in either group that they provided you to start with, you want to click on this, because this will then provide you with a potpourri of other things. Look at this. These are Pennsylvania death records that we didn't search that are online. These are all online. This one's at Find My Past, Ancestry, FamilySearch, Ancestry, MyHeritage, Ancestry. A whole bunch of records that we could search that they're pulling out for us and putting us right there for you, so that if you didn't have success initially, here's some other records for death records and online images that are browsable. And here's a collection from Find My Past called Pennsylvania Cemetery and Burial Records, 1700 to 1950. So they provide you with all those that you can try. I mean, they're doing everything they can for you so that you don't have to do deep stuff. You don't have to go over into the record search area where there's dozens and dozens and dozens of records to have to weed through. And they don't want you to have to go in the card catalog. They're just providing this for you. Okay, so now if that doesn't work, you're down to possibly substitute records. A substitute record is a record that will get you the information you need, but from a source that you might not think of as being, like in this case, a direct death record. What other things give you death information? Well, cemetery records, church records, newspapers, obituaries, military records, especially if they had a pension, and Bible records. And for any of these, if FamilySearch has a collection that you could search, they will give you a link that will get you to that. So Pennsylvania cemetery records, right here, obituaries, Pennsylvania obituaries, and so on. So this is yet another thing you can do to try to help you find that death information. With these, you may not get the full date, you may not get the full place, but you may get some ideas, some tips, you may get at least a partial date sometimes. If that doesn't work, there's always something that we don't think about, which is maybe we're the problem. So they go back and try to give you some suggestions. Spelling variations. Don't be hung up on the one spelling. Like we were talking about the Colladays, maybe it's Calladay. Try it with an A and see what happens. My favorite one is my grandmother's last name was Sands, just like the sand on the beach, S-A-N-D-S. A cursive S in the old days looks like an L. There are many Sands that are listed in transcriptions as Lands, L-A-N-D-S. So sometimes if I can't find the person, I'll just put in Lands and see what comes up. This doggone it, oftentimes that's where they are. Okay, but they'll give you other ideas about a given name search, how to adjust that, adding information or removing information, date ranges, and search states. Instead of counties, don't limit it to the county, make it the whole state, things like that. They try to give you some ideas that will help. And then if none of that helps, we're down to the last one, which is why the record might not exist. And essentially in Pennsylvania, prior to 1906, there is no statewide registration, so you're not going to find anything. It starts in 1906. The catch is nowhere when they start a registration system are you going to get 100% participation from the get-go. In Pennsylvania, they feel that true compliance with the law didn't occur till about 1916. After 1916, you're fairly comfortable that you're going to find your person if they were born there or died there. These are death records if they died there. But between 1906 and 1916, there could be a lot of people that died that never got recorded. Okay, and then there's always the old courthouse thing, records destroyed. And they say there are problems with 3 counties. And if you click on them, they'll tell you the sad story of why you're not going to be able to find your ancestor because of whatever happened in that county. Fortunately, my ancestors aren't in those counties, so I'm in luck. Okay, so that takes you through all the various parts of records. And my mind's shot. Guided research. And so with that, are there questions? I'm going to try to get back into the room. Stop our recording. Are there questions?
I just didn't realize there